Welcome to the Festive Tech Calendar 2022. I believe this is one of the final videos in the series, and I hope you've enjoyed all of them. My name is Julian Sharp, and I've been involved in the Microsoft ecosystem for about 20 years now, implementing solutions, business solutions around Dynamics, Power Platform, and Azure. And I'm a big advocate of a certification. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer. I train people. But also, I'm a big advocate of using AI. AI is becoming more and more important as we go through how we create better solutions for everyone. So, the purpose of this session today is to talk about the Azure AI related certifications that Microsoft has. So, I'm going to talk about the AI 900 to begin with, the AI Fundamentals, and then we'll look at the other two related exams, the AI 102, which is the around Azure Cognitive Services, it's the AI Engineer, and then the DP100, which is the Data Science, which is around machine learning. And then I'll talk about what the exams are like for those of you who've not experienced any exams. Now, Microsoft has quite a wide range of exams and certifications, and AI does feature in some of them. For instance, in the Power Platform, there are AI Builder, which is part of the Power Platform, which is based on Azure Cognitive Services. Features there as well. You also find AI in other certifications, but these are the ones that are focused on artificial intelligence and machine learning specifically. They come under the Azure AI and data area. And we're going to start off with the fundamentals, the Azure AI Fundamentals. Now, for me, this is probably one of the, if you're going to do one certification, it should be this one, because it opens up you up to so much around what AI is and what it's capable of. It's really the fundamental knowledge of machine learning and artificial intelligence. It's made around concepts and the related services. So we're going to take a bit of a look at this one, because this is what I think most people will start off with. This is a slide that Microsoft has, just talk about what's available, what it's aimed at, and it's aimed at if you're new to AI or AI on Azure, because it talks about AI concepts and about some of the related Azure services. It's really an opportunity for you to demonstrate your knowledge around machine learning and artificial intelligence and those related Microsoft services. Now, what Microsoft gives us is quite a lot of capabilities. We have self-paced training on Microsoft Learn. We'll take a quick look at that in a bit. There's instructor-led training with people such as myself. There are virtual events where Microsoft run those online. They're typically about 3 to 4 hours. You just sign on to a webinar. And often with those fundamentals webinars, you get a free exam voucher as well. So they're always worth looking out for. Just sign up, listen. It's not the full course. You should always follow up with Microsoft Learn material, which again we'll look at. And there's also practice tests and also some sample questions. And for me, fundamentals, when you take them, they're relatively straightforward. They're more about the what and the why rather than the how. You're not expected to know how to do things, but it's more about the concepts and capabilities and the high level features. So as we say, fundamentals, it's foundational knowledge. And in terms of, if you think, it's only for technical people, I think this Azure Fundamentals is for everyone. It's for both technical and non-technical people. If you don't need to be a data scientist or a software developer to do this, but it's useful to have cloud basics. Also, I mean, if you do the Azure Fundamentals, the AZ900, that one also covers some of the AI. There are questions about Azure AI in the AZ900. So I actually say probably take that one first. It gives you a good grounding in the cloud features, and then you can come on to do the Azure AI Fundamentals. It's also just to reinforce the Azure Fundamentals, or any of the fundamentals, they're not prerequisites for any of the other courses I'm talking about. Though I would. Personally, if you're going to be taking the AI 102 or the DP100, I'd actually do this one first. Just because it's going to give you that basic understanding and also get you introduced to the exam experience, which for a lot of people is quite overwhelming. And I'm going to talk about that at the end. So what's in the Azure AI Fundamentals? Well, it has 4 objectives. Whenever you look at a Microsoft exam, we talk about 4. We talk about the objectives, the main areas of what the exam covers. And there are 4 of those in the AI 900. The first of which is First of which is an overview of general AI workloads. What's AI used for? And also some considerations about the ethical use of AI. And we see there it's about 20 to 25% of the exam. We then look at the fundamentals of machine learning. So what's actually involved in creating machine learning models? What do you have to take account of? And really that's going to focus on the major types, regression, classification, and clustering. Those are three it's going to look at. And you can not just understand how they use, which one you use where really. And understand the process you go through from getting data, cleansing that data, training your model, evaluating your model, etc. And that's what that's. Again, that's probably the largest, around 25 to 30%. We then look at specific features of Azure Cognitive Services, particularly computer vision. So there's computer vision, custom vision, and the Face API, and maybe looking at some things such as document processing or forms processing. And then on language. Now, language is probably one of the biggest uses of AI for which most people come across. So we'll look at analyzing text and understanding machine learning natural language processing models and learning models. And then also talk about chatbots, which is one of the major uses you've probably come across. And again, that's 25 to 30%. So it's not every machine learning model type. It's not every feature of cognitive services. It's really just an overview of some of the major features. It's really, as I say, it's fundamentals or foundational. It's the introduction to it. We'll go much deeper into each of these topics in the other exams. So when we look at the related services that are used or you have to have a slight bit of knowledge about for the AI fundamentals, as I said, for Azure Machine Learning, you need to understand the regression, classification, and clustering, but also the different options we have in terms of the Azure Machine Learning Studio and also using automated machine learning. And then some of the processes you go through in that. For cognitive services, it's mainly around computer vision, custom vision. If you look at cognitive services, there's about 5 major areas of cognitive services, from vision, language, decision making, knowledge. We're only looking at a few of these, and within them, we're only looking at a subset of the capabilities. It's really just, again, which do I use where? When do I use computer vision versus custom vision? When do I use the Face API rather than computer vision? And what's form recognizer used for? For me, that's one of the major, most useful ones. In terms of language services, we'll look at text analytics, so understanding things like sentiment. We'll look at speech, the translator capabilities, and then probably one of the most important language services is understanding, language understanding. How do we have conversations? And that feeds in then into building bots using the Azure Bot Framework with question answering as well. So that gives you an idea of the scope of the products and capabilities. So I've got a few references here for you. Let's first have a look at the exam. Every Microsoft exam has an exam page which includes a number of different things, including the study guide, which I'm going to show you in a minute, the learning path, which is the Microsoft Learn materials, and then we've also got some sample questions. So I'm just going to quickly show you one or two of them, just give you an idea of what's involved. So let's have a look. Here's the exam page. So if you look at the exam page, it starts off with what we call the scope of the exam, or the exam, who it's aimed at, and it tries to tell you who the exam's for. So again, it reinforces technical and non-technical. And then we go down understanding where it is. So first of all, we're going to look at the study guide. So here's the study guide. The study guide breaks down those 4 areas that I mentioned: AI workloads, machine learning, computer vision, and natural language processing. What it does, it breaks them down into different bullet points. So we see here, describe artificial intelligence workloads. It's broken down into 2 objectives: features of common AI workloads and identify guiding principles for responsible AI. And then we've got these tasks, these bullet points. Just in terms of general knowledge about Microsoft exams, when you're asked to write an exam question or to create an exam question, and I've done this for Microsoft, not in this exam, but for others, you're given, Julian, will you write 3 questions and identify features of common AI workloads? And I go and pick 1 or 2 of the bullet points there and I write a question around that. So it's really important when you're preparing for an exam is to go through this study guide and make sure you understand at least each of the bullet points, because you may get a question on them. You won't necessarily get a question on everyone. You'll get a subset of questions, and you may not, for instance, get asked about computer vision in identify features. You may just get asked about natural language processing and knowledge mining. And then when you look at some of the verbs, it's useful to understand. Identify often refers to being able to pick one or the other. It's either being able to choose between, so if I'm doing this, which workload is it? So if I'm doing X, is it anomaly detection or computer vision? Or it's you're given features, say which of these are features of anomaly detection. So it's more about identification, choosing between the options. It's not understanding deeply how they work. So when would I use anomaly detection, for instance? When would I use knowledge mining, or what can knowledge mining be used for? When you get into things like describe, again, it's similar to identify. It's just being able to switch between describe the capabilities of, or when would I use them. So identify and describe are often used interchangeably here. And you'll see as we go through the study guide, most of it's describe and identify. That's what I mean. It's about the what. What is it? What can it do? Okay, so we see we've got the 4 breakdowns. So again, when I prepare for an exam, I just go print this out or copy it into Excel, and I mark what I know, what I don't know. And then if there's a bullet point I don't understand, I'll go read up about it, either in Microsoft Learn or somewhere else. I can maybe go search or watch a video on YouTube. There's loads and loads of resources out there. And one of the primary ones is Microsoft Learn. So if we just go down here and have a look on the way to prepare, just scroll. This is the exam page. We've got the items in the collection. And this is what we are. So we've got our learning path. So getting started with artificial intelligence. Let's have a quick look at this one. So I'm just going to drill into it. And this is a Microsoft learning path with it's just a single module on this one. So this is basically get started. You go into it and you click through and you read. Occasionally you will find little videos in here. These are quite useful. They're normally about 3, 4, 5 minutes videos just to help you understand what is it and understand what AI is. And it talks about just understand what do we mean by anomaly detection. And then going through machine learning. Again, we've got a little video. This is quite common in the fundamentals. You'll see videos like this about what's involved. And I love this. This is a lovely little illustration I use a lot when I'm teaching machine learning, and it understands the capabilities of it. So I just want to point out that Microsoft has this available for you. And at the end of every module, there is a knowledge check. These are always useful to go through to understand what's available. So to be able to say, okay, what's the answer? So if I want to do, okay, I want to do this, and maybe, I'm going to choose the wrong answer. And maybe just choose. And I check the answers, and it's going to tell me if I got them right or wrong. So it tells me here I got this wrong, and it tells me what the right answer. It tells me why I got it wrong as well. So these are always useful. I always do these, even if sort of my final preparation for the exam. Even if I'm fairly confident I know the stuff, I'll still go through the modules and go through the check your knowledge at the end of each module. Okay, so that's what we have in terms of Microsoft Learn. We also have some sample questions. For fundamentals, Microsoft has added about 20 sample questions. Again, these are visible. If I go back to the exam page, this is where you can find them. Oops, not too far. It says here, go to free sample questions. It's on the exam page. And we've got 20 of these questions, and you can see here. So typical, often they're like simple questions. It also gives you an idea of the question types you're going to get in the exam. So get a multiple choice. Which type of artificial intelligence workloads uses sensors to proactively alert users about potential mechanical failure? And you say, is it A, B, C, or D? And if I go further down, I'll actually see it's got the answers. So I know the answer to that one is A, anomaly detection. So you've got the answer, and also it tells you why. It gives you the rationale. It also gives you links, often to Microsoft Learn or to Microsoft documentation. So you can go find out what that is. So I can click in it use in my life. So again, I'd use these as a final check. I'm ready for the exam. We have those sample questions. Now, only the fundamentals. We don't have these samples elsewhere yet. We've also got a book written by me on Microsoft Press, the Microsoft Azure AI Fundamentals book. You can go have a look at that. That's available on all good booksellers, including Amazon. So you can go have a look at that there. It's probably a little bit out of date because the exam has changed a little bit, but the main principles haven't changed. There's something just been moved around, and some of the services in Azure Cognitive, especially around language, they've changed, and bot as well, like Q&A makers now, question and answering, and Lewis is now conversational language understanding. A lot of renames, a few little changes, but the principles are still the same. So that's fundamentals. What's next? Well, AI Fundamentals covers both Azure Cognitive Services. Now, for those who don't know Azure Cognitive Services, they're pre-built machine learning models. So computer vision and language understanding, which we just talked about. I don't need to build a model, which means I don't need to go gather data, use algorithms, and train my model and build it and deploy it. That's what machine learning is. Cognitive Services are their models built by Microsoft that you can just consume. So AI900 covers both the machine learning part, where I actually build models and use data to create my models with algorithms and lots of processing, and Azure Cognitive Services, which are pre-built models that you can just easily use in your applications. AI102, which is the Azure AI Engineer, that focuses on the cognitive services, those pre-built models, whereas the DP100 focuses on machine learning. So it sort of splits into two. And you don't have to do both. I've done the AI900 and the AI102. I did those a couple of years ago, actually. And the AI100 before it. And I'm actually now studying for the DP100. I'm taking it in January. That's my next target. So I'm actually working on that one right now. So let's look a little bit more detailed at the Azure AI Engineer. It's the AI102. It's the AI102 because we had AI100. They've changed it a lot. Now, for me, this is actually more of a developer exam. Engineer is probably a bit of a misnaming. It's about people who build, or developers who build solutions using Azure Cognitive Services. Okay, so it's not it is fairly technical, and I think it should probably be called Azure Cognitive Services Developer. And to me, this is how I actually got started a lot in actually Azure to begin with. I was starting to build some text processing on some emails coming in. I wanted to start analyze emails, understanding how they should be responded to. And I used Azure Cognitive Services, the text analytics and the number and the sentiment analysis of cognitive services. So I was doing this years ago. So I really got into doing AI in Azure in the first place. I then got into building machine learning models later, but this is where I started. And as a developer, it's very, very easy. Everything in Azure Cognitive Services is just a REST API. They're really easy to consume. So what this exam is about, understanding all the capabilities and when I would use them and how I use them. So this is where we switch from fundamentals, which is about the what, into the how. This is an associate level exam, which means you need to be a practitioner. You need to be doing this. It's somebody who does the role of building solutions and managing those solutions, and even deploying those solutions using Azure Cognitive Services. And again, we have the study guide. We've got self-paced training, instructor-led course, which is a 4-day course. This tells you the scope of this. You actually need a 4-day course. And the actual course includes a lot of labs. It's very much hands-on. Notice we don't have sample questions, but there is an official practice test for a measure up. And that's pretty good for this exam if you get the chance to use that. Okay. And it really does leverage the Azure Cognitive Services a lot. Now, the other thing about this exam is you need to be proficient either in C# or Python because it's a developer exam. And we're using those SDKs. There are other SDKs available. We've got a Node.js SDK, we've got a Java SDK, but we focus on the C# and Python. And actually, when you come to take the exam, you'll get asked, do you want to do this in C# or Python? Because you will have code examples in the exam. And you'll be asked to either complete the code or put in the parameters. So you need to be proficient in one or the other and understand how to use those. You also need to understand other Azure-related things such as storage, because we're using data. AI is all about data, so we need to understand that. And also, we're going to come back to some things we did in the AI900, which is about the principles of AI, using AI ethically. That comes into this as well. There are 5 objectives in the AI102. There's the plan and manage cognitive services. So how do I manage cognitive services? The resources in Azure, primarily. And which ones do I choose? And that's not as simple as it first sounds. Then we've got computer vision again. That includes the Face API, the custom vision, and everything. We've got natural language processing again. But we've also got some other things in more detail, like knowledge mining. So Azure Search, Azure Cognitive Search, for instance. And then conversational AI, which is Azure Bot Framework. But we're also bringing other things such as question answering and Bot Composer. So it's quite wide-ranging, but it's more about using those Azure Cognitive Services. And this is a list of those services that you may need to be aware of. And again, it's not every single Azure Cognitive Services, because there's quite a lot of them. We don't necessarily go into some of them as much detail as others. And we've got, as before, we've got an exam page, which we'll look at in a second. We've got a study guide, and we've got a learning path in Microsoft Learn. We've also got labs, and I'm going to talk a bit more about the labs here, because the labs here are very important. You need to get hands-on. If I have a mantra about Microsoft certification, it's about get hands-on. You need to have experience of actually doing it. You can't just read this. It won't work. So let's have a quick look at the exam page here. So here's our exam page, AI102. And it's just summarised here what you need to know. It's what I've talked about in terms of understanding the requirements, managing deployment, choosing the right solutions. The C# or Python, because we need to use the REST APIs and SDKs. And then we also need to understand components, including storage as well. And again, what you see is we've got the study guide. And let's have a look at that study guide. As I say, we've got 5 functional groups. And these are actually broader. What you find when you get beyond fundamentals, this is quite a large number of bullet points. So within the first plan and manage Azure Cognitive Services, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 objectives, each with 4 or 5 bullet points. So you see there's a lot more involved. Again, they often start with select the most appropriate. So this is about choosing the right thing. What service should I use for this particular requirement? But then we get into things, okay, how do I manage security? How do I deploy mine, protect my cognitive services resource? So this is more of an Azure, generic Azure. You're using things like, how do I use my Azure resources? How do I protect my keys? How do I protect with networks? How do I manage authentication? So how do I then manage the secrets and privacy and all those sort of things? And if I'm deploying a model as well, so I'm going to use Azure Cognitive Containers. So particularly if I'm running Azure AI Cognitive Services at the edge in a remote device, I'm going to use containers, IoT at the edge. So how do I manage those as well? How do I deploy those? So it's a little bit more than just the AI services. It's really about the whole deployment and management of those Azure AI services. How do I write in code? How do I then deploy it? How do I then monitor and manage it? So you see here again, the verbs are not just identify and describe anymore. You might get a few identifies, but how do I deploy? How do I detect? How do I do things? And this Face API, for instance, there's quite a lot of capabilities of the Face API. You need to understand the different uses of the Face API. So a number of different methods available, from detection to similarities, maybe, and how do I use it in particular circumstances? You see here, just going down, there's a lot of little bullet points in here. So each of the services, custom, we got before we just talked about computer vision. Here we're talking about Face API, custom vision, video analyzer as well. Form processing will come in here as well. So you see there's a lot of bullet points in here. This is why it's a 4-day course. I think this is quite there's a lot more effort in understanding this exam than there is some of the others. There's a long list of bullet points, and I haven't even got to the end yet. Azure Cognitive Services. So we've got all that there. Let's have a look. If I just go back to the exam page, we've got the learning paths. So we've got a number of learning paths. Prepare for engineering, translation, and I click on more. So you see there's a lot of, let's just have a look at this one. Create conversational AI solutions. Let's have a quick look at this. A learning path with 2 modules. First one is building a bot with a bot framework, and then building with bot composer. Now, when you get into this, these are a lot more detailed. There's a lot more information, and you'll often find in some of these they've got exercises. So let's look at the exercises, and often you'll get in these exercises a lab environment. So you can launch. I'm signed into Microsoft Learn here, and I'm able to go launch this lab. So I don't need to have my own Azure environment set up. I can just go use it. And it creates an environment for me to do the lab. They last for a couple of hours, and you can try and finish the lab off in here. So you get your own virtual machine spun up for you. You can go manage them in here. So they're quite useful if you haven't got something else. But if you do have your own Azure subscription, you can go and use these labs. These labs are all in GitHub. And what you see is a long list of labs. This is the list of labs we do on the 4-day course. So just so we sort of build a bot with bot framework. Let's have a quick look at that one. And what this does, it takes you through step by step how to do it, where we're going to clone the repository. It talks about creating a bot. Again, you choose C# or Python. So it's useful. This is a good example of where you need to do this. And I actually, when I went through this, I did both just to get myself familiar with, because I'm more of a C# person than a Python person, but I wanted to learn the Python. And you see it's got step-by-step instructions of what you can do, and then it talks about running and installing and setting this code up. You've even got code here to put in. And for me, I get a little hint when you come to do this: never copy and paste the code. Type it out, because it helps you understand what you're meant to be doing. Maybe not for all of it, but for some of it. But here you can build a bot and you actually test it. So that's a good example of a bot. Now, you see there's quite a lot of labs here. So this is going to take you a lot of time. Now, I don't recommend skipping any of these. Some of these are relatively straightforward. Some are actually quite long. This one is actually quite a lot longer than it first seems. And understanding search and how that all works and how you set all up is actually important. How you create indexes and set up the skills. It's worth spending the time going through this and understanding what's involved. So there's a lot of labs here. They're all available to you, and they're on the link in here. And hopefully these links will or slides will be made available for you at the end. So just to recap on the Azure AI 102, it's about deploying solutions based on Azure Cognitive Services. Not every single one, but the really important ones around vision, language, and chatbots as well. So it is more of a developer focused, although I suspect a non-developer might be able to get past. But I know I took the AI 100 when it was where it was much more about the theory. When I went to take the AI 102, I was like, oh, actually, this is a lot harder. It's actually a much more representative exam, and I found it okay. I should have been a bit more hands-on, even though I'd done it before. I hadn't done it for a while. I thought, oh, it's just the same. No, it was, first thing I had to choose C# or Python. I thought, okay, that's different. Never had that before in an exam. That told me it's going to be code. And it was much more developer orientated, understanding how we deploy and use these APIs and when we use them. So I think it's a really valuable exam course. It's actually one of my favorite courses to teach. I don't teach it that often. But it's always useful to show people how easy it is to actually use AI in your solutions to add intelligence and predictive capabilities into your applications without really needing to understand machine learning. And that's really what cognitive services are about. And that brings us on nicely to the DP100, the Azure Data Scientist. And this is the one I'm actually studying for right now myself. So this is, how do I build machine learning models in Azure? How do I manage the resources? Again, there's a large part of the managing the Azure resources. Understanding storage becomes actually much more important here. So Azure storage capabilities, what storage I'm going to use, how do I manage that data, how do I get data in? Because a large part of what a data scientist does is gather data, then manipulate that data or prepare that data so it's ready to build models with. I'm not going to get into the what an Azure data scientist does in detail, but essentially that's what they do. They gather data, they get that data, large amounts of data, and then they go and run experiments and train models. And we then need to understand how we deploy those models, particularly in things like Azure Kubernetes Service, so AKS. And again, we've got the responsible AI coming in here as well. How do I use AI ethically? And what are some of the things I can do to mitigate bias? When it comes to cognitive services, Microsoft's taking care of that for you. But when you're building machine learning models, you really need to understand what you're doing and be able to explain your models and be able to make sure you're not inadvertently affecting people through your model. There's a lot of power in machine learning. There's also a lot of danger. So let's have a look at the exam page or exam summary here. Pretty similar to the AI102. It is an associate level exam, but it's really aimed at the data scientist. You should have expertise in applying data science and machine learning in Azure. And how do I build and run machine learning workloads based on some of the Azure services? So it's, and then how do I deploy it into production as well, which is, again, a big part of it. So you do need to be pretty much, again, hands-on with this. I don't think it's a particularly hard exam, actually. I actually think the AI102, from my understanding, is harder. But let's have a look at what's involved. So we've got 4 objectives. So we've got, how do I build a machine learning solution? We've got preparation of models. How do I deploy? How do I get data and train the models? By far the biggest, and it is the biggest. That's what data scientists spend most of their time doing. And then finally deploying off into Azure Kubernetes or Azure Container Instances or whatever it's been replaced with now. So those are our 4 objectives, and we have the same as before. We have an exam page, we've got study guide, learning paths in Microsoft Learn, and also got hands-on labs as well. So we'll have a quick look at those. So this is the exam page. Again, you've got the link to the study guide, and then you've got the skills measured, those 4 I mentioned. Let's have a look at a bit more detail. So again, this is quite a long list. So the functional group's got design and prepare machine learning solutions. 1, 2, 3, 4 objectives, each with about 3 to 4 bullet points. So again, it's understanding what each of these are, managing resources, just actually fairly similar to the AI102. The first objectives are really about getting your environments ready, using your Azure resources, make sure they're secure. Where's my data? Where's my, and here, compute resource. And it also brings in a couple of other things like Databricks and Synapse Analytics. You need to know a little bit about those as well, mainly because we can use them, but we're not really going to focus on those. Explore data and training models. You see here it's got a whole load of points about transforming data, using the different services like Azure Data Explorer. Creating my training models, the machine learning design. So we have a number of different options for building models or building machine learning models. So we've got the learning designer, which can do a lot of your data prep for you. Or we're going to also go into here, do it using code, using Jupyter notebooks, or using the SDKs with Python. So it's quite a long list of bullet points. Again, some of these are some are straightforward, but there's quite a lot in here. So it goes right from the development of machine learning models, all the way through to deployment and monitoring them. So we've got ML ops, how to automate this with DevOps as well. So you need to, it's not really developer, where data scientists will write code quite typically in Python. I'm not sure if it mentions Python or C#. Well, we do. Yeah, we mentioned Python. We talk about notebooks, which are Python. So it will be. As I say, I haven't taken this exam yet. I'll hopefully take it in a couple of weeks. I'm going to book it this week for a couple of weeks' time. So I'll talk about that, what to expect in an exam. So those are the 3 exams involved in Azure AI. Let's now have a look at what's involved in taking a Microsoft exam. This is for people who've never taken one before. And the first thing is we have multiple question types. So the first thing, how and why not what, is more about fundamentals. Well, actually, the exam changed. So fundamentals is more about the what is it. When we get to the associate levels, it's more about the how and the why. We have different question types from about 50% of the questions, roughly 50%, every Microsoft exam is single or multiple choice. So choose 1 or choose 2 or choose 3. The rest of the question types are what are called innovatives. They're different things, like they've got drag and drops, or which are you've got to drag over. And we'll have a look at the question types in a minute, or they're active screens. Now, in fundamentals, you don't get many of the more complex ones like graphical interpretation or hotspot. You typically get a few drag and drops, maybe some active screens, and multiple choice. When you get into the associate level exams, like the AI102 and the DP100, you're going to get a case study. And I'll talk about them in a minute, or maybe 2 case studies. You'll also get a much wider variety of question types. And I always like to talk about Bloom's taxonomy. Very much this is an idea of the cognitive level that you need to understand for an exam. So in fundamentals, we're much at the lower 2 levels about remembering, so recall of facts and basic concepts, or understanding, explaining ideas or concepts. So it's really that lower level. When you get into the associate level exams, such as AI102 and DP100, you get into the apply, analyze, and evaluate levels. So much more high level. It's very, very common in, say, the associate level exams to have 2 or 3 concepts combined together, where you have to evaluate the scenario, which it takes into account a number of different things. Whereas in fundamentals, each question is typically about one thing at a time. When you get into associate levels, you have to have that higher level of cognitive knowledge. Not every question will be evaluate level. Some will just be, how do I do this, which is the apply. Or maybe analysing some results. But you will get a mixture. You will get some understanding questions in the associate levels. You will get some easy ones. But you do get harder and harder questions. So I always say, this is one of my thing, get hands on. This is my hashtag I use a lot in tweets and everything. Say it's important, especially you get at this high level, that hands on knowledge. It helps reinforce that available for you. Now, I'm going to recommend a couple of things. First of which, there is a couple of videos available for you. For fundamentals, it's what to expect in fundamentals exam. It'll go through what I did before. And for other exams, other exams, there's this one here. I'm actually going to just show you this one, this second video, just very, very briefly. So have a quick look at it. It's on the, what's called the exam readiness zone. What this is a little video, and it talks about hints and tips on the exam. So it's written by Liberty Munson, who organises all Microsoft exams. I'm not sure how long this video is. It's about 20 minutes. And the other one's minutes. And it'll just go through, talking through the exam, what to expect, what you're going to do. And it talks you through the exam experience as well. So Liberty's there telling us all about everything. And she's great. So it talks about what you need to do. And some of the other facts as well. And again, this page is on here about how long you need to prepare. She says, what's she say? It's got a number, how does she say? There's a little bit on here which I thought it takes 120, 140 hours of study, typically. It depends where you're starting from. If you've got experience, you're going to need less. But even if you've got lots of experience, there are going to be some things covered by the exam that you may not have had experience with before. So it's always useful to go through that. There's also a YouTube video from somebody who's now works for Microsoft on how to think like a certification exam. This is well worth watching. It explains how people write questions and how to interpret a question. It gets you into the mindset of how to answer questions. So I'll just point you at that one there. Right, the other thing which I think is really useful is this exam demo, what Microsoft has built. So what it does, it talks you through the different question types. So I'm going to go quickly show you this. It's aka.ms/exam demo. If I go to this is what it looks like. And it gives us a different question type. So this is an individual single choice question. You can only choose one. And I can go and it goes through different question types. So so this is choose two. It won't let me choose three. So it takes you through the different question types. This is really useful to go through, just so when you hit the exam, you're not scared by the different question types. And it talks you through them. And you can go through the different questions. And it shows you the exam experience. So really, really useful. One of the things I always show to people if they've never taken the exam before. So that's me done. Hopefully you found this useful. And you're now encouraged to maybe understand what's involved in these 3 exams, certifications, and hopefully you're going to go and take them. And if you have any questions, you can find me on LinkedIn, Julian Sharp. I think there's only me. There's only one Julian Sharp on LinkedIn. So thank you very much.